Despite the arguments about Eminem cheating on Kim with groupies on tour, and Eminem pistol whipping any guy that had the nerve to enable Kim's cheating back in Detroit, the Slim Shady show would go on, and Eminem would continue performing dates for the Up in Smoke tour all over America and Canada. And after ticking off around 10 shows from the list in America, and returning from a big Canadian show in Toronto, on July the 6th, Eminem would return back to his home state of Detroit for 2 back-to-back concert shows. Firstly, playing the 20,000 capacity Joe Louis Arena in the heart of downtown Detroit on the 6th, followed by the home of the Detroit Pistons, the Palace of Auburn Hills in Michigan's Oakland County on the 7th, a venue that can host up to 23,000 people. No doubt this was a huge deal for Eminem to return to his home state, rocking 2 enormous stadium venues alongside some of the biggest names in rap. Now, the details of exactly what went down between Eminem and Kim over these 2 days is a little bit blurry, but it's believed that Kim attended one of these concerts in person. The problem is, perhaps she might not have realised what she was walking into. Now, despite what some people think, as far as I'm aware, the song Kim was never actually part of Eminem's tour list during this tour or any tour. Go figure, because the Screaming Murder anthem is a bit of a showstopper and isn't quite in line with the sort of fun, weed-smoking vibes that you would expect from the Up in Smoke tour with Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. Furthermore, it's unlikely Eminem would have performed this song because he reportedly said in a July 2000 interview that he found this song too emotional to even listen back to. But according to numerous set lists floating around online, Eminem's set would start off with a sequence where he would talk to the crowd in a skit, before launching into another more funky murder anthem which isn't aimed specifically at Kim, titled Kill You. So the question is, what was Eminem's concert intro all about? Well, if you've ever seen the Up in Smoke tour DVD or video, you will know that Eminem famously had a sequence in that show where he would bring out blow-up dolls, telling the crowd that they were members of the Insane Clown Posse, another rap crew who he had beef with.
We got ICP here tonight. We got the Insane Clown here tonight.
Here's the thing though, Eminem didn't always say that that doll was the Insane Clown Posse. This intro actually changed over the course of Eminem's tour. And shout out to the Eminem fan YouTube channel, Rivaleska, for his amazing research on this topic. Because through one of his videos, I was actually able to find out that for the first batch of concert shows, Eminem actually started his set telling the crowd that that blow-up doll was actually Kim, with a rare audio recording of this original intro dissing Kim even being preserved to this day on YouTube.
A lot of you probably have heard or read in the papers that I've been having some little marital problems or whatever with my wife, Kim. But I'm here to tell you tonight that that's all good between me and my wife. Matter of fact, we got my wife. Yo, bring my wife out. Where's Kim? We got Kim here tonight. We got Kim right here. Oh, meaning me, what the f is going on, dog? Hey, yo, give me my dog. God damn.
Well, I'm sure you can imagine that Kim was in a shock when she went to watch Eminem's show in Detroit. Now, it's unclear exactly which of the 2 shows she attended, but if I had to guess, I would assume that she went to the show on the 6th at the Joe Louis Arena thinking things would be all sweet. Apparently, Eminem had told Kim that he wouldn't be performing that song that night, and indeed, Eminem never did perform the song Kim, but I'm sure you can imagine the shock that she felt when she saw Eminem coming out on stage with the blow-up doll telling the entire crowd that she was in attendance. And Kim herself would later discuss her shocked and hurt reaction to this incident in numerous interviews, seemingly misremembering and believing that he had performed the song Kim.
I had went with my sister and some friends and had asked him before we went to the show if he was going to perform that song, and he said no. He said no because I know that you're going to be there and I wouldn't do that to you. And sure enough, he decided to do that song and not only perform the song but use blow-up dolls as to reenact like me being choked and just disrespectful things to the blow-up doll, and then threw the doll into the crowd.
One night I was at a concert of Marshall's and he was singing a song that was about me, and he had a blow-up doll up on stage that looked like me, and he was physically beating it and kicking it around and threw it out to the crowd. And just seeing the crowd response and everybody cheering, singing the words and laughing, and it just felt like, you know, everyone was staring at me and knew that it was about me. And that night I went home and I tried to commit.
It's a minor detail, but I think maybe Kim thought that Eminem had performed the song Kim, when he may well have just used the Kim instrumental in the background of that intro where he brought out the blow-up doll. But still, he would diss Kim on stage before launching into the song Kill You, kinda directing that song at Kim. So it has the same effect. I can't even begin to imagine just how crushing and traumatic Kim must have found that experience, being humiliated in front of as many as 20,000 people. Now, Kim herself would claim to have left the venue, crashing her car on the way home, and reportedly trying to take her own life in the aftermath.
And I immediately left after that. I got into a car accident on the way home. I was so upset. And I went upstairs in my bathroom and I ended up in the hospital.
Once again, there have been differing accounts over the years over the exact timeline of events, with Debbie Mathers actually claiming in her memoir that Kim would indeed destroy her wedding ornaments and wind up hurting herself on the night of the performance on Auburn Hills on the 7th. Not saying strictly whether or not she attended that show. In Anthony Bozza's biography, it also suggests that Kim had made this attempt on her life whilst Eminem was still performing at the Joe Louis Arena, but that biography also goes on to kind of contradict itself, saying in another segment that Kim actually did this during the show in Auburn Hills. As I said before, over the years the timeline of this event has become blurred, but I think the most likely explanation was that Kim probably attended the show that was at the Joe Louis Arena on the 6th, and was so shocked at what she saw, she would ultimately flee the venue, returning home and harming herself before that second show had taken place. Because Kim would later suggest in a Channel 955 interview that Eminem actually visited her in hospital following this incident, apparently pleading with her not to make him cancel his next show.
What was his reaction when he found out about that?
He came to the hospital after the show and he said, "I hope you don't expect me to cancel my next show." And left.
That was it?
That was it.
You attempted, and he said, "Don't get in the way of my work. I gotta go."
Yeah, over 300 stitches. I was laying there. They weren't going to release me for 3 days. So, somebody had to stay home with my kids. And that's the only thing he said. Don't expect me to cancel my next show.
Kim's turmoil would make international news headlines, and even BBC News would report on Kim's attempts to take her own life on the 7th of July 2000. And this heartbreaking episode would even later be broken down, perhaps with a slightly blurred timeline in a later VH1 documentary.
On July 7th of 2000, the Up in Smoke tour rolled into M's hometown of Detroit. Kim Mathers attended the show.
I know you guys heard a lot of things about, me and my wife, and, we're having these problems, but my wife, Kim, is here. And I mean, the crowd was like, oh, yeah, and then he comes out with the blow-up doll, and it went from, claps to awes and explosions.
Later that evening, months of anger and tension came to a head. She went home and...
The following month, Kim would actually sue Eminem for emotional distress as a result of his song Kim, seeking $10 million in damages and attempting to block Eminem from rapping about her. Now, this is perhaps why Eminem changed the intro of his concert set list, instead referring to the blow-up dolls as members of the Insane Clown Posse rather than Kim, with a theory floating around on Reddit suggesting that after the Kim incident and subsequent lawsuit, that this had essentially blocked Eminem from performing or broadcasting the original show sequence dissing Kim. Now, this was truly the final straw in Eminem and Kim's relationship. At this point, Eminem was being sued by both the man he pistol whipped for kissing his wife and his own wife for the hurtful things that he had said about her in front of tens of thousands of people. And at this point, it's truly hard to imagine this relationship going anywhere other than the divorce court. And so, in the summer of 2000, just 1 month after the onstage performance of Kim and Kim's breakdown that left her hospitalized, Eminem would file for divorce, just 2 months after their first wedding anniversary. Debbie Mathers said in her memoir that she believed Eminem had filed for the separation not entirely seriously, but in the hopes that it would calm her down. And apparently this worked for a little bit, with Kim and M even reconciling for all of just a few days, before Kim would apparently catch M by surprise, hitting back and filing divorce papers of her own, with Debbie apparently claiming that Kim called her, telling her that she was serious about ending the marriage this time, and saying that she planned to take her newly minted millionaire son to the cleaners financially due to them not having a prenup. Debbie claimed that Eminem was left broken-hearted about his split from Kim, suggesting that despite the fame giving him a chance to get any woman in the world, the only one he truly wanted now didn't want him back. And it was truly over. Kim herself would later admit to Dr. Keith that she knew the relationship couldn't be repaired due to the rampant infidelity on both sides.
Our marriage failed because I was unfaithful and he was unfaithful. It's just at that point in time that we really didn't have anything in common. He had went one way and I went on a different way.
The divorce filings were followed by a bitter custody battle. M wanted full custody of Haley as well as Kim's niece Lainey, who he would formally adopt due to her own mother struggling to care for her due to a battle with substance abuse. But Eminem apparently feared losing both of his children in court due to Kim's spiteful attempts at gaining full custody. Debbie would claim that Kim had asked the court for $2,740 a week in child support, a mansion, and still holding out for $10 million in damages for defaming her relating to the song Kim. Clearly, all the drama and media scrutiny regarding the lowest and most private tragedies of him and Kim's private life was truly getting to Eminem, and this would be reflected in his lyrics. In the midst of the legal battles, Eminem would make an appearance on the track Don't Approach Me by Ride Pimper Exhibit on his December 2000 project Restless, rapping about his desperate attempts to hold on to his private life, juxtaposing that with imagery of his wife Kim holding a knife as he tries to calm her down, as well as lamenting on his loss of privacy, saying that even in the worst of times for his family, the local news were following ambulances out of the house after Kim's suicide attempt. He would also drop lyrics suggesting that Kim's attempts to harm herself were the direct result of his feud with John Guerrera in that parking lot of the Hot Rock Cafe. No doubt this was the most challenging time in Eminem's life since he'd been in a trailer battling to see his daughter all those years before fame, with Eminem later claiming in a Rolling Stone interview that divorce was the hardest thing he had ever gone through. He struggled because he knew Kim all of his life, growing up with her as his first true love, and ultimately blaming himself and his career for her not wanting to stay with him. But M would ultimately conclude that it wasn't his fault and that there was nothing he really could have done to save the marriage at this point. And they would eventually reach an outcome that would be somewhat acceptable to both sides. Because by the next year, in March 2001, Eminem and Kim would officially be declared divorced, with Kim seemingly accepting the complete breakdown of the marriage with no likelihood of preservation, with it being suggested that at this point the split was no longer even contentious. By March the 20th, the divorce would be agreed and the pair would split for the first time, completely and legally, with Debbie claiming in her biography that she believed that the judge had kinda sided with Eminem, awarding Kim a much more humble $1,000 a week in child support, with Eminem keeping the home that he had bought for them both worth $450,000 and writing her a check for $475,000 to buy herself a new home, along with an undisclosed sum to settle the damages for his song Kim, with that settlement later being revealed by Kim's cousin Jenny as a whopping $6 million.
He paid her what, like $6 million or something like that?
Right.
It,
By the way, that's not been out public too many places, so
that's how much she got that?
Right.
But perhaps most importantly to Eminem himself, he was awarded joint custody of his daughter Haley. The failure of Kim to achieve full custody was apparently the result of her having an arrest for possession of cocaine, along with 2 drunk driving convictions. Ironically, Kim would later reveal in an interview that despite the rocky divorce, her and Eminem would continue to maintain an on-again, off-again casual relationship, with Kim moving to a home nearby, all the while her struggles with substance abuse were brewing.
After our first divorce, I moved not far from where he was living, and I don't know, we did our own things basically, you know, but we were still seeing each other off and on, you know. Sometimes we were serious, sometimes it was just, you know, comfortable casual sex. And then I developed a severe problem with drugs and alcohol. Got arrested for possession, drunk driving, and then, I don't know, I was incarcerated, I did rehab.
And unfortunately, during these difficult times, Kim would claim that Eminem was beginning to face the same issues with substances too.
I slowly started to realize, like, he had a lot of the same behavior that I had when I was going through an addiction problem. And I was constantly questioning him about it, and it just started fights.
So, the marriage between Eminem and Kim had come completely to a close. But this toxic entanglement between these two would continue behind the scenes, and unfortunately, substances would become a bigger and bigger part of both of their lives. But for the time being, Eminem would continue his career as a single man, and for the next few years, despite on-again and off-again flings with Kim, he would continue to be a roaring success, continuing to pour the pain that he felt in his personal life into his music for millions to enjoy and be entertained by. And of course, all the while, Kim would be there on the sidelines, with her life falling apart, and Eminem eventually having to step away from music to pick up the pieces, all for the sake of his most true love and inspiration, his daughter Haley.